Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, we'll be talking about the 2021 CFL Draft and just why it's so unprecedented in this weird year we're all experiencing. But really quickly before we get started, if you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button or subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content, just like this. I want to thank each and every one of you for your support lately. We're almost at 100 subscribers, so if you haven't hit subscribe yet, be sure to do so to help us get there. With that said, let's get into today's video about the 2021 CFL Draft. For those unfamiliar with the CFL Draft, here's a brief rundown of how it works. Annually, eligible players that qualify as Canadians under the league's rules are entered into the draft process. This can include players from both the NCAA and Canadian youth sports, with the amount of players coming from each varying year to year historically. By drafting a player, teams retain negotiation rights, but with increasing numbers of Canadians being signed by the NFL each year, a player coming to the league is anything but a guarantee. So it kind of becomes this guessing game. But due to the league's ratio rules, it becomes very important for teams to fill out their rosters with national talent. Nearly half of the team's game day roster needs to be Canadian, while 7 of a team's 24 starters have to be classified as such. With that explanation out of the way, let's look at why this year's event is so unprecedented. First and foremost, we don't even have an exact date for this event yet. Typically, the league hosts its draft roughly a week after the NFL, but due to the unusual circumstances going on right now, and an expected shortened season in all likelihood, things are up in the air this year. Now, I will say that I don't think people should be all that concerned about the lack of an exact date for the draft at this point. Unlike the NFL, the CFL draft isn't nearly as glamorous, so putting together a virtual draft at a snap of a finger is definitely plausible. Though I'm sure from a team perspective, it would be nice to have some sort of concrete details about when this will be. Another aspect of this year's event that is literally brand new is the league is conducting its combine virtually. From my understanding, here's how it works. Players had to submit personal and medical information to teams which required doctors' signatures for verification purposes. Then the players have been asked to record videos of their performance in the combine's usual tests like the 40-yard dash or vertical jump and submit them to teams. Also, teams will have a chance to virtually meet with eligible players up until the draft. So this format raises plenty of questions and challenges for teams trying to evaluate these players, such as, number one, the accuracy of the results, especially the timing drills, such as the 40-yard dash. You could see with hand timing, there's a bunch of things that could go wrong to doctor the scores. So that's definitely a concern of these teams, the accuracy of the drills aspect of this. Number two, the accuracy of medical information on prospects is a huge unknown because you could have doctors that are more friendly to certain players, won't disclose certain amount of medical information, even though they technically should. And number three, the lack of a human element to this draft process is really a big thing because these teams don't have the chance to actually physically sit down with these players. Only in a virtual environment they can do things over Zoom or web conferencing, but they can't actually meet these people in person, what kind of a personality they are, and that is a big challenge to scouts and talent evaluators in this year in the 2021 CFL Draft. Of course, I completely understand why the league is conducting the combine in this fashion, but it doesn't mean that these challenges don't exist. Stemming from this challenge of evaluating players is the cancellation of the 2020 youth sports season in Canada. Players in their final year of eligibility had the option of having their draft year deferred, and many of them did. This means that the talent pool of youth sports players will be remarkably thin, and the league, realizing this, decided to cut the draft from 8 rounds to 6 rounds, while also deciding to keep all NCAA prospects in the 2021 class, so not giving them the option to defer their draft year as well. As a result, expect this year to be heavy on prospects that played in the United States collegiately. Another reason that probably motivated the league to cut the draft size is the fact that because of the canceled 2020 season, there is essentially going to be a double class of rookies in 2021 and at training camps. And so it's going to be very tough for rookies to kind of make their team where they're competing against many more rookies from last year's draft class that haven't had a chance to get on the field yet and prove themselves to CFL teams. Now, with all of these things said, let's take a look at some of the top eligible prospects for this year's class. I will be doing a lot of content on the CFL draft coming up in the coming weeks, so don't worry if I don't go into too much detail. This is just taking a glance at what the top eligible prospects available are. The CFL releases an annual scouting bureau that outlines the top 20 draft eligible prospects, which it continued to do this year despite the canceled U Sports season. What's funny when you look at these rankings is typically the guys near the top aren't the ones that actually go high in the actual draft. I suspect this to be the case this year as well. The top 5 guys on this list, Alaric Jackson, Josh Palmer, Chuba Hubbard, Eamon Ogbongbemiga, or however you say that, I'm sorry for the mispronunciation there, and Holland are all on the NFL draft radar, which means they likely won't go high in this year's draft. Virginia wide receiver Terrell Jana is the highest listed player here that I can see going in the first round as it stands right now. Liam Dodson out of Maine is an offensive lineman who, from what I heard, was the favorite to go number 1 in this draft, but he transferred to Texas State, meaning his stock is anyone's guess at this point. The last guy I want to mention here is offensive lineman Pierre-Olivier Lestage out of Montreal, who is the highest ranked U Sports prospect to remain in this draft class. So you see, there's just not a lot of U Sports prospects that remained in this class, instead opting to come back to school for the 2021 season if it happens. So before I sign off today, I have a prediction of sorts for this year's draft. I think because of the double rookie class that I referred to, teams will be more willing to invest draft capital in players like Chuba Hubbard, who will almost assuredly not be able to come to the CFL for a few years in the best case scenario. You might think that teams in years past would be okay with gambling, say, a 6th round pick on players with incredible potential that may not be able to come to the CFL right away, but may pay dividends down the road. But you'd mostly be wrong about that. For example, Chase Claypool of the Pittsburgh Steelers last year went undrafted in the 2020 CFL draft after he was selected in the 2nd round in the NFL draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's also a reason why the CFL draft typically takes place after the NFL draft. Clear up that picture about what prospects are likely to actually come to the CFL, which prospects have signed in the NFL as undrafted free agents. So keep an eye out for the teams throwing even more of these future darts, if you will, in this year's draft. And with that said, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Once again, my name is Jason. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button or subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. If you enjoyed this video, I recently made a redraft of the 2010 CFL draft on the channel, so go check that out if you enjoyed this content. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.